once you've brought in a meeting, if you're the first one to speak, and then the second and the third to speak as well, like a Mr. Kim, interrupting everybody else, guess what? You don't need an audience. You might as well be speaking in front of the mirror. And it has a really destructive effect on everybody. Plus, you're not getting a lot of ideas. So what if you were the third or the fourth person to speak instead of the first person to speak? And a beautiful thing could happen. If you don't want to take the time to do that, use these 3 questions as a starter. Does anyone ever disagree with me? Are you the only one coming up with ideas? And are you working harder than everybody else? Those are signs that there is a flag somewhere, right? So assess.
Yeah, maybe some of the viewers may feel like, oh, that's me. That's me. Also, that's me too. 안녕하세요. 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 전 세계 화제의 책과 저자를 깊이 있게 들여다보는 시간 스텔라의 북인사이트 스텔라입니다. 2026년 새해가 밝았는데요. 여러분은 어떤 새해 다짐을 하셨나요? 그동안은 에너지, 광물, AI 같은 이 토픽들을 다룬 책의 저자를 만나봤는데요. 많은 분들이 좋아해 주신 덕분에 올해부터는 좀 더 다양한 저자들을 만나보려고 합니다. 그래서 오늘은 2026년 마음먹은 거 모두 다 잘해보자라는 의미에서 올해 첫 인터뷰로 리더십 코치를 모셔봤습니다. 얼마 전까지 드라마 김부장 이야기가 화제였죠. 회사의 영혼까지 바치는 그렇게 일에 헌신했던 베테랑이지만 정작 팀원들에겐 꼰대 상사로 불리는 좀 짠한 인물이었잖아요. 그런 김부장을 보면서 많은 생각을 했던 것 같고요. 어디서든 더 잘하려고, 더 많이 해내려고, 더 완벽하려고 노력하는 건 정말 큰 장점인 것 같아요. 하지만 이런 우리에게 꼭 해주고 싶은 이야기가 있다고 말하는 저자가 있습니다. 마이크로소프트, 구글, 아마존을 비롯해서 여러 글로벌 기업 CEO들의 멘토가 되어준 리더십 코치 사비나 나와즈인데요. 오늘은 세계적인 리더십 코치와 함께 2026년을 더 단단하게 만들어줄 마음가짐에 대해서 이야기를 나눠보겠습니다. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Sabina Nawaz, author of You Are the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be and Others Need. Sabina is an elite leadership coach who advises C-level executives of Fortune 500 companies. She advised top executives at Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, as well as Bill Gates himself. Sabina, welcome to Stella's Insights.
Thank you so much, Stella, for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience? Feel free to share anything you'd like them to know and say hello to our viewers.
Absolutely. Thrilled to be here. Hello, everyone. All of your listeners know what leadership is. They can see acts of effective and ineffective leadership in themselves and others. What is the hardest part of leadership is to act with courage. And courage is when our heart starts pounding and we take action regardless. So that's what I'm paid to do, is raise people's heart rates.
Before we begin, I want to make sure our audience fully appreciates the breadth of your experience. We've mentioned Microsoft and Google, but my understanding is that your work extends far beyond the tech industry to organizations like the UN, government agencies, and leaders across many different sectors, right? Can you tell us a bit more about the diversity of experience?
Yeah, it really spans over 24 countries across multiple continents. And it is people who are in executive positions and senior positions, no matter what the organization is. It could be a startup with, say, Series C funding. It could be somebody in the UN. It could be someone in manufacturing. So it spans the gamut. What's very interesting, Stella, when I left Microsoft was the only corporate job I had for almost 15 years. And when I left Microsoft, I thought, I'm going to go get experiences with as many different clients as possible, as many different organizations as possible, because I know Microsoft, but I don't know any other organizational culture well. What I've come to realize is that fundamentally, there are organizational systems that uphold the dynamics of organizational systems, no matter where we are. Of course, there are some differences culturally and otherwise, but by and large, 80% of the time, there are some common organizational and human dynamics that come to play, which is why when I wrote You're the Boss, it has resonated for so many different people in many different countries because they see themselves in that.
Behind closed doors, What surprised you most about these leaders? Was there a specific moment that made you think like, I need to write this book?
Well, there's two. Behind closed doors, one of the first things that surprised me and continues to, I guess, surprise or stand out for me is just how much of a disconnect there often is between the executive or the manager and the people they manage in terms of the impact they're having. Contrary to what many people in organizations might believe, almost no boss wakes up in the morning saying, let me see how I can make life miserable for my people. That's not a goal. That's not what they're paid to do. And so when I talk to the employees and they say, my boss is making life miserable for me, I get very curious. And when I take those interview results back to the boss, the feedback to the boss, they are shocked, Stella. They're completely shocked. Not only that, I don't find them to be the jerk that their coworkers are describing them as. So what's going on there? And that's what got me very surprised, very curious as to how this seemingly wonderful human being is coming across in a very different way as a boss.
Yeah, there seems to be like a paradox. The very qualities that make someone successful as an individual contributor can become liabilities when they step into leadership, right?
Yes. This is exactly what I talk about when in the chapter called New Level, New Rules, which is, and to be clear, this is not what got you here won't get you there. In other words, oh, you've got to stop doing the strength that got you here. What I mean is that strength, when it's viewed from the perspective of people who have less power than you, can also have a different underbelly, can have a different impact on folks that is not healthy. So, for example, let's say that somebody is very calm under pressure, which we would say is a very admirable quality. It's a strength. It's a superpower maybe that got them promoted. But for people who work for them, they might also think this person's uncaring. They lack passion. They lack emotion. I don't know what they're thinking or how they're feeling about this. So that very calmness can look very different when people are reliant on you and your power.
Right. That's really interesting. We'll definitely come back to that. But first, I'd like to start with a fundamental question that might be a bit challenging. You've worked with leaders across so many different organizations and cultures. What do you believe good leadership actually is?
Well, as I say in the book, there's no such thing as a good leader or a bad leader. They all reside within us. So for me, the fundamental tenet is that it is not power that corrupts us, it is pressure. Under high pressure, we can raise our voices, get snippier, not take the time to connect or empathize with people or even give detailed instructions on something. And that pressure can bring out the worst on us if not managed. But if managed well, pressure, after all, turns coal into diamonds. So we're never going to be pressure free, but we could follow some simple techniques to become pressure proof. And pressure, when combined by power, can become really dangerous because while we're acting out in these corrupted ways under pressure, nobody is going to tell us when we're in a position of power what's going on. So pressure on one hand is this silent corrupter, and power on the other hand is this great divider. So we have bosses who are unaware of their impact or worse, the harm that they're causing, and because employees are unwilling to speak up as well. So the people who are the most effective at navigating the path of leadership are those who recognize that pressure and power are their own distinct forces and that they need to be managed intentionally.
I ask because here in Korea, there is a lot of enthusiasm for like performance-driven, results-oriented leadership. Think like Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 or leaders like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. They're so popular here in Korea. Many people see their intense, demanding style as driving force behind like building Tesla and Apple into a global powerhouses. How do you evaluate that kind of leadership? Do you believe exceptional results require leaders tough methods or intense pressure?
Yeah, so I think that there are some things that are not mutually exclusive or that are not in opposition with each other. Intense times call for intense focus, intense pressure, intense drive for quality and a high bar. There is everything great to be said about driving for a high bar. Managers who recognize that how they act under intense pressure, how they treat their employees actually produces better results when they act out better under pressure are the ones who win in the end. So you can have a very direct style. You can push a lot and you can push a lot further if you recognize that the people you're pushing are human beings.
Your book reminds me of something many of our Korean viewers relate to. There's a popular Netflix series here called The Dreamlike Life of Mr. Kim, about a manager at a big corporation. This connects so powerfully to what you write in this book, power blindness, the megaphone effect, the superhero syndrome. Why do you think someone like Mr. Kim, who has been successful for decades, completely misses out his team actually needs?
That's such a great question, Stella, and it is at the heart of the art and science of management. Because in many ways, the more successful we become as managers, the less likely we are to be aware of the effect our behaviors are having on other people. Why? Because power is like a broken volume knob in two directions. Going upward, everything people say to their managers is muted. When an employee says everything is fine, what they actually mean is I've started a secret group chat about your management habits. And similarly, everything a manager says downward is amplified. So if a manager just casually says, hey, can we chat tomorrow? There goes the evening for the employee because they think they're about to get fired. So the bigger the distance, the bigger the power gap, that's the term I use in the book, the harder it is for us to recognize our blind spots, the effect that we're having on people and therefore on the results and productivity of the business. No one's going to tell us that unless we shift ways in which we get feedback from the system.
As you said, many professionals believe they are great communicators, but often they are miscalculating their own impact. What happens to a team when a leader has that blind spot?
The research shows that it actually employees go into fight or flight mode. They're going into survival mode. They're not focused on the results of the organization. So they're playing video games, or as research shows, employees even deliberately make mistakes. Now think about that. They deliberately make mistakes in their own work just to get back at that boss who's not treating them well. Countless employees have told me they spent countless hours talking to each other about the boss instead of focused on the work. Or the manager who thinks they communicate so well and are actually not very clear, but nobody dares to tell them that. They are spending meeting after meeting after the meeting with the boss to really try and divine, to try and guess, what did the boss actually say? So it's a lot of wasted time and very corroded, damaged relationships.
I think a lot of people may resonate with what you just said. They experience similar things at work. Right. That also makes me think of another trap, the I have to do it by myself for it to be perfect mindset. Why is this so dangerous? What happens when a leader tries to solve every problem themselves?
Yes. So talk about pressure. How much pressure are you putting on yourself when you're sucking up all the oxygen to yourself, all the work to yourself? In some organizations I work with, they even have a term for this. They call it cookie licking. Have you heard that term before, Stella?
Cookie licking? What is it?
So there's a warm plate of cookies, and this person goes and licks every single cookie. Now, nobody else can eat the cookies. And of course, they cannot eat all of those cookies. They would get sick if they did. So first of all, you're increasing the pressure on yourself. Second of all, nobody is growing and learning. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you're the one who always jumps in and licks all of those cookies, nobody else has any experience doing that work. So many of my clients say, well, Sabina, I would delegate if somebody knew how to do it, or if they could do it better, faster, show more initiative. Well, you've trained them to not show initiative because you're going to jump in and take it on. You haven't trained them on how to do this. You haven't taught them. So you're not growing people. You're increasing pressure on yourself. You're decreasing other people's motivation, or they're just motivated to slack off and go skiing or hiking instead of working because they're like, oh yeah, my boss is going to do it anyway.
The leaders should stop licking the cookies. When leaders come to you with these problems, how do you typically guide them? Like when they licking the cookies?
Well, so there's many reasons why people might be doing that. And so we try to find out what might be some of the unmet hungers, unmet desires that causes them to do that. So for example, someone might do it because they have a strong need to control everything. But someone else might do it because they're trying to remain relevant in the workplace. Maybe they're getting older and they think if I don't stay enough in the center of things, I will be forgotten and left by the wayside. Someone else might have a desire to prove that they're more superior to everyone else because that's how they've gotten noticed in their family or in their schooling so far. So we try to find out what is that inner unmet need first that you're trying to meet through these behaviors. The other thing we talk about is this concept of a delegation dial. See, the single biggest mistake the people I coach make in delegation, and almost every one of them does this, is they treat delegation like a switch. I either do it myself or I delegate. And when I delegate, I just go, hey, Stella, can you do this for me? Please get it back to me by Friday. And then, of course, Stella comes back on Friday and it's not what I wanted. So now there goes my weekend and there goes Stella's motivation. Instead of treating delegation as a switch, what if we treated it as a dial, that you notch it up slowly, you don't abdicate. Based on the experience, the skill, the knowledge for that particular task of that particular employee, you might simply start by doing the job yourself and having them watch you do it. That's the first step of the dial. Next, you might notch it up to say, I'm going to give you very precise instructions. You tell them exactly what to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. The third notch is you teach them. Hey, the reason we do step 3 before step 1 is this. And here's how exactly we do step 3. So you can start to teach them. Notch number 4, you coach them. They come back, you ask a bunch of questions. What did you think about? What else did you consider? What's the risk with this? Etc. And only then do you do the switch where you act as a safety net. Hey, I trust you. I'm going to give this to you 100%. Come to me if you have any questions. So that really helps people unlearn this habit of licking the cookie, this superhero syndrome, in small steps to say you don't have to give it all up. Just do it in little steps.
Little steps. Oh, that sounds like a very good advice. So first thing they have to do is realize what their unmet needs are. And then step by step, they delegate. Okay. That's a really good advice. Thank you. So for aspiring leaders watching this and thinking, I want to be a better boss. So what should they focus on before they step into leadership? Like, is it a unmet needs? I just said?
Absolutely. Like, don't go to work hungry. If you go to work hungry, you do the same things you do when you go to the grocery store hungry, right? I buy chips and chocolate instead of broccoli and carrots. So how can you meet those needs somewhere else? I had a client who really wanted a lot of positive feedback from everyone. Now, as the boss, when she wanted that, her team had figured her out. So she told me one day, I'm going to go and I'm going to read them the riot act. They're not sticking to the budget. They really need to make some cuts. And next coaching session, I said, how did that go? And she said, oh, we didn't get to that topic because they started talking to me about what a wonderful job I'd done in that last all hands meeting. I said, yeah, because they figured you out. You need this. So instead, she got involved in some nonprofit organizations and volunteer work and got a lot of validation, a lot of praise for what she was doing there. So she could go to work with that need addressed. So that would definitely be something for an aspiring manager to understand. What are your needs? The second thing is separating out yourself from your role. This is particularly hard when you get promoted first to manager also, because often you're promoted within the same organization. And the very people who were your friends, who were your peers, are now your direct reports. And you might have to deliver tough messages to them that you never had to before. In the book, I also have something called the feedback flip, which will allow you to not have to work so hard when you have to deliver tough messages to people. And the idea is, before you give your feedback, ask the person how they think they're doing on that particular project, the particular meeting, or in general. Now, what you'll notice there, best case, they will actually do a lot of your hard work for you. They'll tell you the things they're struggling with, or they think they're not doing well. Great. So now you can have a more collaborative conversation without just being the bearer of bad news, because they already know it, to say, let's put our heads together and figure out how to get things back on track. Now, worst case, they say, oh, I'm doing great. And you're thinking they're doing terrible. But that also is a great opportunity to talk about alignment, to say, okay, I hear you, and I have a very different perspective. Now, perception is reality. So you just need to address the perception that I and some others might be seeing. Usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. It helps us get aligned and in sync with people. And we don't have to do all the heavy lifting ourselves.
I see. Before we move to our closing questions, I'd love to get your specific advice for two groups of people watching us today. First would be the aspiring leaders working toward promotion. And second would be the current leaders who are struggling, like Mr. Kim, perhaps recognizing themselves in some of the traps you've discussed. Sabina, let's start with the first group. For those working so hard to earn their next promotion, what should they be doing right now to prepare?
Yes, when they are promoted, to recognize that promotions can sometimes be the most dangerous time in your career. It's a cause for celebration, of course. But once the celebration is done, it's the thing I was talking about with new level, new rules, is what propelled you here is going to be seen very differently by other people. So to prepare for it, it's not doing those strengths. Keep your strengths. Your strengths are what make you world class. But add an and. Here's what I mean. Let's say that you are calm. And as we had talked before, and people are wondering, what do they think? Are they passionate about this? Do they care about me or about this project? So what if you said, I'm going to still maintain my calm, and I'm going to communicate that. I'm going to decode that for people so they make sense of it. So I had a client once who was incredibly calm, incredibly stoic. It was very hard to tell when he was excited or when he was upset. So he would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at a 10. This is me getting excited. Without any huge emotionality, but for him to use a number to tell us how excited he was helpful. And similarly, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 3. So again, people don't blow that out of proportion. So simply using numbers, for example, to do that and. So think about your strengths. Think about how it might be seen less charitably by the next that are going to be craning up soon as you get promoted. And put in an and. What's the other action you need to do to help bridge that power gap?
Good. And for leaders who are currently struggling, like Mr. Kim, what are the most critical things they need to keep in mind? And if they feel they've already lost their team's trust, where would you say is the best place to start rebuilding?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. I'm going to give you two things. One, at the back of my book is a section called 360 Yourself. It's a set of 43 questions that you can ask yourself to do a self-test. Because again, remember, power distorts, so no one's going to tell you a lot. So ask those questions to see where are your trouble spots. But if you don't want to take the time to do that, use these 3 questions as a starter. Does anyone ever disagree with you? Are you the only one coming up with ideas? And are you working harder than everybody else? Those are signs that there is a flag somewhere, right? So assess.
Yeah, maybe some of the viewers may feel like, oh, that's me. That's me. Also, that's me too.
There you go, Stella. Might be time to take those other 42 questions into consideration. So you can then pinpoint. The beauty of the book is that you can go to just that one chapter where you see there's most trouble and work on that. Here's the second thing as you recognize yourself there. And I say this with the greatest affection to the audience, is exercise your shut up muscle. Unlike Mr. Kim. Here's what I mean by that. Once you've brought in a meeting, if you're the first one to speak, and then the second and the third to speak as well, like a Mr. Kim, interrupting everybody else, guess what? You don't need an audience. You might as well be speaking in front of the mirror. And it has a really destructive effect on everybody. Plus, you're not getting a lot of ideas. And in today's day and age, we need every idea we can get because there are very few playbooks on what the future holds for us. So what if you were the third or the fourth person to speak instead of the first person to speak? So that's what I mean by build your shut up muscle, exercise your shut up muscle, take notes so you don't worry about forgetting your ideas. And a beautiful thing could happen. Let's say 3 out of the 5 things that you've taken notes on, somebody else said. And now the 2 things you say are truly unique. So guess what? Instead of you speaking, taking up all the airtime and looking like the smartest person in the room, and also the most arrogant, by the way, everyone can leave feeling smart. They contributed ideas and you contributed ideas, and there's a broader range of ideas that have now been contributed.
I want to emphasize how interesting the tests are. Actually, I like that. So I just want to say to our viewers, answer the questions and you will know like what type of leaders I am. Okay. Out of curiosity, do you have like the ideal boss in your mind?
I don't because I don't think it stays stable. There is no one ideal boss. You know, my own story, I when I started, and for a long time, people told me I was the best boss they had. And then once I was under certain unique pressure situations, I became the worst boss people had. So it shifts based on pressure. So the closest thing I can get to an ideal boss is somebody who is aware of when they're acting out, when they're at a pressure point, and that there's that microsecond of choice to say, what choice am I going to make? Pressure corrupts, but pressure also reveals character, as somebody wise once told me. So what choice are you going to make? And people who can manage pressure and power as their own distinct forces are the most likely to hit that ideal spot most often. Because every action I take as a manager has a reaction, kind of like Newton's laws of physics. Are you aware of the reaction your actions have on others?
Mm-hmm. Right. And if you are a leader, that action takes a lot more weight on it.
Exactly.
So every CEO, even the great CEOs, challenged with those struggling moments, like under a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. I mean, the higher you rise, the more pressure you're under.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I'd like to close with our signature question, but with a slight twist today. Usually when I interview writers in tech, I ask them what they believe will change or stay the same over the next decade. But today I feel a little bit different. So we've been talking about something deeply human, like leadership, psychology, choice, and growth. So I prepared 2 questions that look at both the future and the past. First, looking forward, as AI increasingly automates the analytical side of leadership, like data-driven decisions and evaluations, what do you believe becomes even more vital for human leaders? in your view, what is the one irreplaceable human element?
Radical presence. Radical presence. We are in danger of getting so distracted by our technology, but also distanced from human connection. So making sure one of the micro habits you can in fact do, the more AI comes into the picture, is daily connection. And in that connection, sometimes I turn off my second monitor when I'm talking to people, so I don't see anything flashing in, even in my peripheral vision, that will take away from that radical presence. Because fundamentally, every human being wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to be loved and recognized. So radical presence, human to human, I think becomes even more important.
Radical presence. That's a very good answer. Second, looking back, you've spent over 25 years coaching thousands of leaders through their struggles and breakthroughs. What have they taught you? What's the most profound lesson you've learned from them?
What an amazing question, Stella. Because, people always ask, well, what have you done for them? But the truth is, I have learned as much and received as much from them as they may have received from me. One of the pivotal shifts that happened for me in working with my clients has been to the recognition fundamentally that I am enough. And I then in turn teach this with my clients too. So let me tell you more about what I mean. When I first started, I would spend hours preparing, thinking about the tough questions they might come at in a session, anticipating every branch of every decision tree before going into that meeting. And very soon I realized, it's funny, now that I'm talking to you, I realize it comes back to the same answer of if I just show up and be radically present, that is sufficient. Of course, I'm prepped. I'm not going in completely cold, but I also have a lot of experience. And I know how to work with people in the moment based on whatever is showing up. So why don't I just trust myself to simply do that, to show up, be fully present, and then the rest will follow. Just last week, I had this very interesting conversation. To call it a conversation would be a stretch. This client of mine, she's a CEO, she's under tremendous pressure. Who isn't? And she spent probably 50 minutes of our 55-minute session speaking of all the pressure she was under, what the struggle was, how she's tried certain things. It's not working. I mean, I might have managed to throw in a question edgewise, but not a lot. At the end of the 50th minute, we've got 5 minutes left. She goes, "Oh my gosh, you are just brilliant," to me, after she's spoken for 50 minutes nearly nonstop. And I said, "What do you mean?" Right? And she's like, "Nobody else understands this. I can't say this at home. They don't get it. I can't trust anybody at work because everybody's involved in this. You just listening and knowing that you get it. And that one question that you asked me, which was maybe 30 seconds in there, really shifted how I'm thinking about this. So you're brilliant." So that lesson of do less and trust that is more, that is sufficient. That has been a huge gift.
Do less. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes just listening is really powerful.
Well, I can't help but notice in this interview, Stella, you're clearly a very experienced and gifted interviewer. Because sometimes I'm sure you've seen those interviews where the interviewer is so over-prepared that either they're not able to pivot to the question in the moment, or they're taking up too much time showing their preparation rather than the guest who they're trying to highlight, right? So having that right mix takes time to keep paring it away and doing less and less so that the thing really shines. The person who wrote The Little Prince said that perfection is not when we have nothing more to add, but when we have nothing left to take away.
So before we finish, if our viewers take away just one thing from our conversation, what would you want it to be? Any final message you'd like them to leave with?
When under pressure, do nothing. So typically when we are under pressure, we work harder, we sacrifice gym time or time with our family. We wake up at 3 a.m. writing notes in our sticky pad. And that just generates more work and more pressure and more franticness. I advocate for doing nothing, which I name blank space. This is 2 hours a week during the work week where you unplug, you don't read, you don't talk, you don't do. You sit and think. And that can take many different forms, but that puts things in perspective. You realize the small things that you were getting worried about are really not worth getting worried about. You come back with a better rested brain and deeper insights, recognizing that the thing you're struggling with, the answer was right there. It was just waiting for the noise to die down so that that signal could come through loud and clear.
Thank you so much. It was a really nice conversation. I feel really, really happy that we could invite you as of our first guest of 2026. It will be an exciting year. Thank you so much, Sabina.
Thank you so much, Stella. This was really, really wonderful. This is also my first interview in 2026. So 감사합니다 again.
Thank you. 오늘의 스텔라의 북인사이트 어떠셨나요? 저는 무엇을 할지 막 결심하는 이 시점에 무엇을 안 할지, 무엇을 덜 할지 결정하는 게 중요하다라고 했던 그 메시지가 좀 크게 다가왔던 것 같아요. 내 선택의 결과도 중요하지만 이 리더라면 그 선택이 미치는 영향까지를 생각해야 한다라는 것도 참 좋은 포인트였던 것 같고요. 이 인터뷰를 하고 나니까 이 책의 원제인 You are the boss라는 말이 참 새롭게 느껴지네요. 이 AI가 점점 더 우리의 역할을 고민하게 하지만 이 사람의 마음을 얻고 잘 연결되는 건 더욱더 중요해지지 않을까 싶고요. 여러분의 2026년 새해 다짐은 뭔가요? 댓글로 달아주세요. 앞으로 더 다양한 책을 만나볼 예정인데요. 만나고 싶은 저자가 있다면 책이나 저자도 댓글로 달아주시고요. 그럼 스텔라의 북인사이트 다음 시간에도 좋은 책과 저자로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 좋아요, 구독 잊지 마시고요. 우리 여기서도 자주 오래 봐요.